All right, welcome back, everybody. Ready for another deep dive.
Definitely. Always up for a good deep dive.
So this time we're looking at, this is Eliza,
Eliza.
a thriller novel by Gary S. Park.
Sounds interesting. A thriller. Right.
Yeah, and we're going to be exploring the story of Eliza Moore,
Eliza Moore.
who is a nurse living in Odessa, Texas.
Oh, Odessa. It's interesting.
And takes a bit of a turn.
What kind of turn are we talking
It's
about?
down a dark path. Let's just say vigilante justice.
Vigilante justice. Okay, now we're talking. That's always a good recipe for a thriller.
Yeah, and this one it's got a unique angle to it.
Oh, how so?
Well, because we're analyzing, right, a fictional character.
Right.
But within a real context.
I see. So grounding it in reality.
Yeah, her environment.
Yeah.
So Odessa, Texas. I don't know if you know much about Odessa.
I know it's in Texas, obviously. Oil fields.
Yeah, oil fields, Friday Night Lights, but also 1 in 14 chance of being a victim of a crime.
Oh, wow. That's a pretty high statistic. Sets the stage for some potential drama, doesn't it?
Yeah. So, you've got someone who's deciding to take the law into her own hands.
In that kind of environment, it's almost understandable, isn't it?
It is. It's very interesting. So speaking of ordinary people deciding to take the law into their own hands, let's talk about Eliza.
All right, let's dive into Eliza.
On the surface, she seems pretty average.
Okay.
She's a nurse.
Right.
She likes to, binge crime dramas, have a big bowl of popcorn.
So kind of like us in a way.
Kind of, right?
A little bit.
But there's an interesting detail here.
Okay, I'm listening.
Originally she had this dream of working in film production.
Really? Film production, huh? Interesting. So instead she finds herself in Odessa, surrounded by victims of violence. I wonder what made her make that switch.
Right. So what do you think? What do you think, listeners? Does that career shift, does that kind of tell us something about Eliza's character?
It makes you wonder, maybe a fascination with storytelling, with creating narratives, even if they're a little bit darker than what she originally envisioned.
Yeah, or maybe even a need for control.
Right.
Because in film production, you're kind of creating this world.
Yeah, you're the one calling the shots. You're shaping the story.
Exactly.
It's interesting that you say that because when you think about nursing, it's a profession filled with stories. Real life stories, life and death situations.
It is. It's definitely got that.
But it also demands a lot of empathy, a lot of compassion.
Yeah. And compassion, that's kind of at the heart of her transformation, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. She encounters just case after case of domestic abuse.
Yeah.
Like Nina Burst and her daughters.
Right. Victims, repeatedly. Yeah. Victimized by Brian.
The father.
Right. And it seems like the system is failing these women. And her frustration, it just grows and grows.
Well, it's a chilling reality that the novel really exposes.
Yeah.
The cyclical nature of domestic abuse and how often the systems that are supposed to help, they fall short.
They do. It's a question that I think resonates with, probably a lot of our listeners. Think about the news stories that we read, the cases that stick with us.
Absolutely. And it's this frustration that leads Eliza to that night at the Silver Lining Bar.
Right. And she sees Brian Burst, the same guy who's been, abusing his family.
Right.
Trying to assault another woman.
Oh, wow.
And it triggers something in her. It's like this deep-seated sense of injustice.
So it's like all of her frustrations, all of her experiences, they kind of culminate in this moment.
Yeah.
Right.
And she decides, I'm going to follow him.
She's going to take matters into her own hands.
Yeah. And what starts as like, okay, I'm going to confront him.
Right.
It escalates.
Right. Things get out of control.
Into a physical altercation on a loading dock.
Okay.
And he falls, hits his head, and dies instantly.
Wow. So accidental death.
It's an accident. It's important to note she didn't intend to kill him.
That's a crucial distinction, I think.
And it's like this chain reaction that just sets off the rest of the story.
I can only imagine. Talk about a life-altering event.
Yeah.
Suddenly she's thrust into this world of panic.
Secrecy.
She's got to cover up any evidence, right?
Yeah.
She's desperate to avoid any suspicion.
Right.
And you see, the author does a great job of showing, this psychological impact of all of this.
Oh, yeah. She's consumed by anxiety. She's constantly checking the news.
Oh, I bet.
Terrified of being discovered.
Yeah, living a double life.
Absolutely.
Outwardly, she's the caring nurse, but inwardly she's burdened by this terrible secret. And then another tragedy hits.
Another tragedy. So this is her colleague.
Alison Kemp,
Right.
found dead.
Suspected victim of domestic abuse.
Wow. I mean, you can imagine how this must have impacted Eliza, right?
Right.
It just reinforces that belief that the system is broken.
Right.
That, violence against women it's going unchecked.
Absolutely. And that's where we see the shift.
Oh, shift, the turn.
The grief, the anger.
Right.
It just morphs into this chilling resolve.
She's going to take matters into her own hands. She's going to become judge, jury, and executioner.
Yeah.
Wow.
So she transitions from reactive to proactive.
Okay, interesting.
And she starts researching
Oh.
known abusers in her community.
Researching,
meticulously planning their accidents.
Oh, their accidents. Now that's a chilling thought.
Yeah, yeah.
Her medical knowledge, right?
Yeah.
It becomes a weapon. Her understanding of the body of pharmacology.
Right.
Twisted into a tool of lethal justice.
Right.
It's unsettling, to say the least.
Yeah.
To see that kind of expertise used in such a dark way.
Yeah. It's a dark turn. Yeah, so her first target is Benjamin Treforos.
Benjamin Treforos, all right.
And he's a plumber.
Okay, a plumber.
Seems to have this perfect life. The house, the wife, the kids.
The white picket fence, the whole 9 yards.
Right. But beneath the surface,
There's always something lurking beneath the surface.
Right. There's a history of abuse. There's a pattern of violence.
That nobody sees.
Right. And Eliza is determined to end it.
So she's basically playing God here, deciding who deserves to live and who deserves to die.
She is. And she does it with chilling precision. I mean, she stages this fatal accident.
Staged accident. Okay.
That leaves no trace of her involvement.
Wow, she's good at this. Scary good.
Yeah. This is where the novel, it really dives into this complex psychology.
Right, of a vigilante.
Yeah. I mean, because she's not just a cold-blooded killer.
Right.
The author shows us her internal struggle. I mean, the moral conflict.
She's got to be wrestling with this.
She is. Every life that she takes.
Yeah.
She tries to justify her actions. She views herself as this force for good.
Right. Trying to balance the scales in a world that allows so much evil to flourish.
Yeah.
But the question lingers, doesn't it? Can violence ever be a justifiable response to injustice?
It does. I mean, it haunts the entire story. And it's something that I think it's a really good question for our listeners to consider as well.
It's a tough question, a really tough question.
What are your thoughts? I mean, where do you draw the line?
Where's the line between justice and revenge?
Yeah, yeah. Is there ever a point where taking the law into your own hands is acceptable? It's a good question to think about.
It is. So we left off with Eliza successfully taking out Benjamin Treforos.
Right, eliminated him.
And she's definitely crossed a line. She's in a morally gray area.
Definitely.
But instead of backing off, she kind of dives in deeper.
Right. It's like she's almost, I don't know, almost addicted to it now.
Yeah. I mean, her actions escalate.
Right.
Her targets become more complex, like Douglas Randall.
Oh.
This is a figure of wealth and influence who preys on vulnerable women in another town, by the way.
Oh, wow. So she's branching out.
She's branching out, exactly. It's almost like she's, I don't know, graduating to a whole new level of vigilante justice.
Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think about this shift, listener? Is this a sign of growing confidence, or is it like a descent into obsession?
Well, I think it's a little bit of both, right? I mean, it's definitely chilling. I mean, this calculated escalation, I think it speaks to like a darker side of her personality that's starting to kind of come to the surface.
Yeah. And with this trip to Slayton,
right,
where Randall lives,
right.
I mean, it's more than just about taking down another abuser. It's about Eliza distancing herself from her former life, her morals, her identity even.
It's like she's shedding her old self.
She is. And we see her struggling, right, to keep up this facade of normalcy, especially with Donnie.
Her boyfriend, right.
Her boyfriend, yeah. She's compartmentalizing. She's lying. She's pushing away the people who care about her.
And, that really does resonate with other cases, that we've discussed.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Of vigilantes. Haven't we seen this? I mean, this pattern of isolation and secrecy, it plays out in real life scenarios as well.
All the time. It's like a classic element of the vigilante narrative.
Hmm.
The burden of their actions, the moral compromises they make, it often leads to isolation. And then it becomes this vicious cycle. The more they isolate themselves, the more they justify what they're doing, and the deeper they fall into this I don't know, this self-righteous spiral.
Right. And for Eliza, I mean, it's not just her mission that's pushing her toward isolation.
Right. What else is going on?
Remember that hidden box
Oh, yeah, the hidden box. I'd almost forgotten about that.
at Donnie's place? It hinted at something, something criminal, something she couldn't quite figure out.
Right. Something shady.
It's like the author's intentionally sowing these seeds of doubt. It's forcing us to question everything.
Right.
I mean, is Donnie a red herring? Is he meant to distract us, or is he about to become Eliza's biggest challenge?
Yeah. I mean, it's a brilliant way to keep the tension high just when we think we're starting to understand Eliza's motives. Another layer of complexity. Now, we've got to question the people closest to her. Is she projecting her own guilt and paranoia onto Donnie?
Right.
Or is he manipulating her, using her for his own ends? I mean, we don't know. It's great.
The reader, I mean, even us as, doing this deep dive, we're constantly on our toes.
Absolutely.
And remember that moment at the bar when she drops the beer bottle?
Oh, yeah.
It shatters and Donnie walks out.
Right.
And she's left there alone. I mean, it felt symbolic, didn't it? It's like her world is starting to crumble around her.
Yeah. Like a premonition of things to come.
Yeah.
I mean, her carefully constructed facade,
Right.
it's cracking under the pressure of this double life, the incident with Saunders, the social media chatter, the uncertainty surrounding Donnie. It's all chipping away at her sense of control.
Right. And speaking of Saunders, I mean, let's talk about the aftermath of that confrontation. I mean, he figured out who she was, right?
Yeah. The bitch from the hospital, he called her.
Right. And he even threatened Aiden's life. I mean, it really backfired on her, didn't it?
It did. And it was almost like she underestimated the raw brutality of someone like Saunders.
Yeah.
Up until that point, she'd been operating with a certain level of detachment, right? Using her knowledge to orchestrate these events from a distance.
Right.
But this confrontation, it exposed her.
Her vulnerability.
Yeah, her vulnerability. It forced her to confront the potential consequences.
Yeah.
Not just for herself, but for the innocent people who were caught in the crossfire.
Right. And it really makes you wonder, is she becoming the very monster that she's trying to fight?
Mm-hmm.
Is her quest for justice? Is it turning into like a twisted form of vengeance?
It's the central question, isn't it?
Yeah.
When does the pursuit of justice become an excuse for cruelty?
Right. It's a slippery slope. And she's teetering on the edge.
She is. And as she delves deeper into this vigilante role, the lines between right and wrong, they get more and more blurred. Remember that encounter with the construction worker, Donnie.
Yeah, who unknowingly brought up, the deck built over the spot where Brian Burst died.
Right. That was like a punch in the gut for her, a reminder of her past actions.
Yeah.
It's a brilliant use of foreshadowing, that the past has a way of catching up with us. The consequences of our choices, even those made with good intentions, they can linger. They can come back to haunt us.
Absolutely. And, for a while, it seemed like she was hesitant to continue.
Right.
She was researching, domestic violence cases, but she was reluctant to act.
So a glimmer of her old self.
Right.
The compassionate nurse.
Right.
Or was it just the fear of getting caught?
Right. What do you think, listeners? Was this a moment of genuine, self-reflection for Eliza? Or was it just a pause, before the storm?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
And I think the author leaves it open to interpretation.
He does.
Eliza's a really interesting character.
Multifaceted,
yeah.
Yeah.
Capable of great compassion, but also, chilling brutality.
Right.
And this moment of hesitation, it adds depth to her character, makes her all the more intriguing, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, definitely. And then she sets her sights on Douglas Randall. I mean, this guy, a truly despicable character.
Oh, tell me about Randall. What makes him different from her other targets?
Well, I mean, Randall represents a different kind of evil, I think.
Okay.
He's privileged, he's a sadist, he's protected by his wealth and his influence, and he uses violence as like a tool of control.
So he's the epitome of toxic masculinity.
He really is. And Eliza, she researches him and discovers, he has multiple victims, who have been physically, emotionally scarred.
So it's not just about individual victims anymore.
Right.
It's bigger than that.
Yeah.
It's about dismantling a system
Right.
that allows people like Randall to exist.
That enables abusers.
Yeah, exactly. And Eliza sees this.
Yeah.
And it fuels her determination.
But targeting Randall, this presents a whole new set of challenges.
Okay, how so?
He lives in Slayton, remember? Over 150 miles away from Odessa.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
And it requires a level of planning and premeditation that we hadn't seen from her before.
So it's a whole new level of commitment, of dedication. She's not just reacting anymore. She's actively seeking out these targets.
She is.
Researching them.
Yeah.
Coming up with these elaborate plans to eliminate them. It's I don't know.
It's a chilling progression.
It's a chilling progression. Yeah, she's fully embracing this role.
Right. And that trip to Slayton, it's a turning point, It's like there's no turning back from this point on.
She's crossing the Rubicon.
She is. And we see her immersing herself in this, world of shadows. She's surveilling Randall, studying his movements, identifying his vulnerabilities.
It's like watching a predator stalking its prey.
Right.
And the author doesn't shy away from the darkness of it. We see her becoming, more ruthless, more calculated, more willing to take risks.
Right. And she's forced to deceive Donnie, who happens to be in Slayton for work.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And it creates this, tangled web of lies, and it just adds another layer of moral complexity to her story.
Yeah, and the guilt she carries, it's almost palpable.
Yeah.
She's sacrificing everything, her relationships, her integrity, all for this mission that she's appointed herself.
Right.
And it raises a really important question, doesn't it?
Yeah.
What's the cost?
Yeah.
What's the ultimate cost of this vigilante justice? What are the hidden sacrifices that people make when they decide to operate outside the law?
Right. And then we have that scene at Jack's Barrel where she attempts to make contact with Randall.
Okay.
And it's interesting because, she pretends to be this vulnerable woman.
Oh, interesting.
Right, and she's trying to lure him into a trap.
Right.
But Randall misinterprets her signals. He sees her as just another conquest.
That's interesting.
It's this fascinating power dynamic.
Right.
You see her manipulation, her willingness to use her, femininity as a weapon. Yeah.
But it also highlights, the danger that she's putting herself in. Remember when she was almost assaulted by one of Randall's friends?
Oh, yeah, that's right.
If Donnie hadn't intervened.
Right. Who knows?
Right.
Who knows what could have happened? It's a reminder that she's playing a dangerous game.
Right.
And Donnie's intervention, it adds another layer to everything. She's grateful for his help, but his presence also throws a wrench into her plans.
Right.
Right. And then later that night, Randall appears at her motel room.
Right. Thinking that she's, an easy target.
Yeah, misinterpreting their earlier encounter.
Right.
And Eliza, despite everything that's going on, she decides to use this opportunity to do it, to carry out her plan.
Right.
It's a chilling scene. You see this cold, calculated way she prepares. She's detaching, she manipulates him, she uses alcohol to lower his inhibitions.
Oh, yeah. It's hard to reconcile, this version of her with the woman we met at the beginning of the novel.
Right.
Oh, I know. It's like a complete transformation.
Right. That popcorn-loving nurse who enjoyed crime dramas, she's gone.
Yeah, she's become someone else, consumed by this darkness.
Yeah.
It's a stark reminder that, even the most ordinary people are capable of extraordinary things.
Yeah.
Both good and evil.
Yeah.
And the line between those extremes, it can be incredibly thin.
And the climax of this whole Slayton storyline is it's both brutal and unsettling. She lures Randall into a bathtub.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Intending to drown him.
Okay.
But she's overcome by panic.
Oh, no.
And flees.
So she doesn't go through with it.
She doesn't. She leaves his fate uncertain.
Wow. So we don't know. We don't know if he survived.
We don't know. And it's this cliffhanger that leaves us. I was on the edge of my seat wondering what was going to happen next.
Yeah. And in this moment of uncertainty, she flees Slayton.
Right.
running from the consequences, from the darkness that's closing in.
So where does this leave Eliza? I mean, can she outrun her past? What awaits her back in Odessa? What about Donnie? I mean, we'll explore all these questions
We've got to find out.
in the final act. In part 3, stay tuned.
So Eliza, she's back in Odessa.
Right, back in Odessa. But it's like, she's still in Slayton.
Mentally, yeah, she's still trapped in that aftermath, in that encounter with Randall.
Right. She's trying to, I don't know, it's like she's trying to outrun her own shadow, you know?
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And I think that's what makes this final act so compelling.
Yeah, yeah.
Because, I mean, she's not just a vigilante anymore, is she? She's a fugitive.
Right.
From her own conscience.
Right. Right. And that escape from Slayton, it's not just about putting miles between her and Randall, right?
No.
It's about confronting this darkness that's taken root inside her.
It is.
She's running from the guilt, from the fear, from, I
Oh.
think, the realization that this quest for justice that she's been on it morphed into something she doesn't even recognize anymore.
And that internal struggle, it's mirrored in her external world too, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, Odessa, it's not exactly a safe haven.
It's not. It's not.
There's the fear of exposure.
Right. The social media rumors.
About the red-haired girl
Mm-hmm.
who was with Saunders
Right.
and her relationship with Donnie. I mean, it's hanging by a thread.
It is. And she tries to reconnect, but the weight of her secrets, the lies, I mean, they just create this wall between them.
Well, it makes sense, doesn't it?
It does.
Donnie represents this chance for her to have a normal life.
Yeah.
You know, a connection to who she was before all of this. But she can't share the burden. She's trapped.
And it's that feeling of isolation. I mean, it's amplified by her suspicions about Donnie.
Right.
Remember? The box.
The hidden box, yeah.
It's almost like the author is messing with us at this point.
Well, he's definitely keeping us on our toes.
Because now we don't, we're questioning not just Donnie's motives, but Eliza's reliability. I mean, as a narrator, are her suspicions justified, or is this just her guilt
Projecting outwards.
Right? And then, I mean, fate, it intervenes.
Yeah.
In the most dramatic way possible.
Oh, how so? What happens?
She gets called in for an unexpected shift at the hospital.
Okay.
And she discovers that Lori Sumner, the woman she failed to protect from Bailey Saunders,
Oh, wow.
is a patient.
No way.
It's like the universe is forcing her to confront the consequences of her choices, her inaction.
Talk about a gut punch.
Yeah.
I mean, she's face to face with this woman, the woman she tried to save, and her life is in shambles because of the violence she's been fighting.
And it's not just Lori, right? I mean, her son, Aiden,
Right.
is in critical condition.
It's a domino effect,
Yeah.
Her actions have had these unintended consequences.
Yeah. Right. And she feels this immense sense of responsibility. It's like she's realizing that maybe her vigilante mission has actually done more harm than good.
Right. It's like that realization dawns on her.
And she snaps.
Oh, boy.
I mean, the news about Aiden, coupled with her anxieties about Donnie, I mean, it pushes her over the edge.
Right.
She leaves the hospital,
Right.
determined to finish what she started with Saunders.
To confront him again.
Wow. And that final confrontation, I mean, it's intense.
Oh, I bet. Tell me about it.
She goes to his house in the middle of the night,
Okay.
armed with a lethal dose of anesthetic.
She's gonna hand it.
Right. But this time, things don't go according to plan.
Oh, no. What happens?
Saunders, he's ready for her.
He is.
He overpowers her, he disarms her, and the scene ends, with Eliza's fate hanging in the balance.
Wow. So we don't know. We don't know if she survives.
We don't. And that's where the author leaves us.
Wow. What a cliffhanger.
Well, with a cliffhanger. And it's thrilling, but it's also, I mean, it's unsettling.
Oh, I bet. So we don't know if Eliza makes it.
Yeah.
We don't know if Saunders faces justice. We don't know what happens with Donnie.
We don't. And it's brilliant. It's a brilliant ending, but it's also frustrating
Oh, yeah.
because we don't get any, easy answers. It's like he just leaves us grappling with the moral complexities of Eliza's story, the consequences of her choices, and that lingering question. I mean, does she achieve justice, or did she just create more chaos?
Right. Right. And it's a story that stays with you
Okay.
long after you finish the book.
Yeah.
It makes you think about the limits of compassion,
Right.
the allure of vengeance,
Yeah.
and that potential for both good and evil that we all have inside of us.
Right. So, listeners, what are your takeaways from this deep dive? Did Eliza's journey resonate with you? Did it challenge your perceptions of justice, of morality? Let us know.
And remember, this is just one interpretation.
It is.
We encourage you to read Eliza for yourself.
Definitely.
Draw your own
Yeah,
conclusions.
come to your own conclusions, explore the themes, analyze the characters, engage with the story. And until next time, keep diving deep, listeners.
Deep dive.